To Sherlock Holmes, human emotion is a distracting variable. His mind is a perfectly balanced reasoning and observing machine, calibrated to solve complex mysteries by looking only at cold, hard data. When his old friend, Dr. Watson, drops by Baker Street after a long absence, Holmes instantly details Watson's return to medical practice and his domestic troubles with a careless servant, all from a single glance at his left shoe. This diagram shows his exact mental path. Holmes' 6 parallel cuts in the leather to someone carelessly scraping mud off the sole. For him, it is a simple equation: gather physical evidence, process the inputs, and output an unavoidable factual conclusion. He actively avoids softer passions like love, calling them grit in a sensitive instrument. He believes that any strong emotion would crack his high-powered lenses of deduction. His lack of feeling is exactly what makes him an unbeatable observer. That mechanical detachment is put to the test when a man standing 6'6" enters Baker Street wearing a black mask. Holmes effortlessly ignores the theatrical disguise, addressing the giant by his true title, Wilhelm von Ormstein, the hereditary king of Bohemia. The king is in a panic. He is engaged to the second daughter of the king of Scandinavia. Her family holds strict moral principles, and a shadow of doubt about his past conduct would immediately cancel the royal union. And there is a very large shadow. 5 years ago, the king had an affair with a retired opera singer named Irene Adler. Now, Adler holds a photograph of the two of them together, and she threatens to send it to his fiancé's family. The king describes Adler as having the face of a beautiful woman, but the resolute mind of a man. The king tried brute force. He had burglars ransack her house, he diverted her luggage, he had her waylaid outside. All attempts failed to turn up a single trace of the photograph. Adler has promised to mail the picture on the exact day the betrothal is publicly proclaimed. That leaves Holmes exactly 3 days to locate the hidden compartment and secure the blackmail material. Winning this case requires Holmes to calculate the moves of an unpredictable human variable, a woman with a soul of steel who knows she is being hunted. This is the ultimate stress test for his analytical system. Holmes begins his offensive by blending into the local environment. He drops his aristocratic demeanor, dresses as an out-of-work, drunken groom, and spends the morning trading gossip with the stable hands in the mews behind Irene Adler's villa. His quiet intelligence gathering is suddenly derailed. A dashing lawyer named Godfrey Norton rushes into Adler's house, then sprints to a waiting hansom cab, shouting for a frantic race to a church in Edgware Road. Adler shoots out of her house moments later in her own carriage, and Holmes is forced to follow. Tracking them to the Church of St. Monica, Holmes sneaks inside, only to be grabbed by the desperate groom. Because they are short one person to make the ceremony legal, the great detective is dragged to the altar to serve as an emergency witness for Irene Adler's sudden wedding. Adler is now Irene Norton. Her new marital status means she might leave the country or change her daily habits entirely. Holmes realizes he can no longer rely on passive observation. He has to force a mistake. Since the king's hired burglars couldn't find the photograph by tearing the house apart, Holmes decides he won't look for it at all. Instead, he will engineer a scenario where Irene Adler retrieves it for him. That evening, wearing the disguise of an amiable clergyman, Holmes waits outside her door. When her carriage arrives, a violent brawl breaks out in the street among a group of hired thugs. Holmes rushes in to protect her, feigns a severe blow to the head using wet red paint in his palm, and is carried into her sitting room. Outside, Dr. Watson waits for a signal. When Holmes opens the sitting room window to get some air, Watson tosses a plumber's smoke rocket into the room and yells, "Fire!" The crowd outside immediately takes up the chant. This chart details the psychological exploit. When fire triggers an adrenaline response, a person stops thinking logically. Instinct takes over. They rush to save their prized possession. The trap springs perfectly. Believing her house is burning, Irene Adler rushes to the bell pull, slides back a secret panel, and reaches for the photograph. Holmes, watching from his chair, now has the exact location. He shouts that it was a false alarm and slips out the door. Walking back to Baker Street, Holmes is highly satisfied. He set up a complex variable, applied the pressure of human instinct, and received the exact mechanical output he predicted. As Holmes reaches his front door, a slim youth in an ulster coat hurries past on the pavement and calls out, "Good night, Mr. Sherlock Holmes." Holmes stares down the dimly lit street, wondering why the voice is so familiar. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Holmes, Watson, and the king confidently march into Adler's villa to claim their prize, but they are met by an elderly servant, who calmly informs them that her mistress took the 5:15 train for the continent, never to return. Holmes rushes to the bill pole and tears open the secret sliding panel. The blackmail material is gone. In its place is a photograph of Irene Adler in evening dress and a letter explicitly addressed to Sherlock Holmes. The letter outlines her exact countermaneuver. Adler realized where the photograph was hidden the moment the false fire alarm ended. Suspicious of the kindly clergyman, she put on a male walking suit, followed Holmes all the way to his door to confirm his identity, bid him good night, and then spent the night packing her bags. Adler saw through his disguise, recognized his trap, and gathered intelligence on him directly. The infallible logic machine was completely outmaneuvered by an opponent who played his own game with superior speed and precision. The blackmail threat dissolves. Adler's letter assures the king that she loves her new husband and will only keep the photograph to protect herself against any future actions from the royal family. Overjoyed, the king offers Holmes an incredibly valuable emerald ring pulled straight from his own finger. Holmes coldly refuses the treasure. He asks for only one reward: the photograph of Irene Adler left behind in the secret panel. That single failure humbled the machine. Holmes never mocked the cleverness of women again, and in his records, Irene Adler remains immortalized as simply the woman.